Theory. I am here with one of my favorite people in all of tabletop LARP gaming, Jonaya, Kemper.
Hi!
Hopefully I didn't just be like my wall.
I mean, it could. Well, it's probably not your wall. It's probably me. And if so, they're seeing a lot of my walls. They're seeing a bunch of color.
I'm doing my Will Smith.
This is.
I'm super glad to have you on the show because we have hung out twice, and both of those times I have gone, oh my god, I want this person to be my friend. And
surprise, dreams came true for me too. Yay!
Yes. Win-win. And the other thought that went through my head is, oh, everyone needs to hear what this person has to say all the time. So I'm super glad that you're here. Can you tell all of the people a little bit about yourself? What do you do? All that yada yada.
See, this is for me, like, questions like that is always the hardest thing, right? Because there are things, well, I mean, think about this. There are things that people think you do, right? And then there are things that you actually do. You know that meme? Well, it's like what people think I do, what I actually do, who I actually am. Like there's stuff that I do. So I think that I'm known for three things. The first is I am a games academic. I study mostly how people play, right? And why we make the games we do, the stories that are inside of games, specifically role-playing games, LARP and tabletop, so analog, although I do video game stuff as well, but I focus a lot on analog and why we build the characters we inhabit and tell the stories that we tell. And I do it through a lens of intersectional theories, as well as trauma theory, right? And trauma studies. So why do human beings tell stories and why do we as gamers play them? That's like all my academic work right there in a nugget. I also write and design. I'm known a lot for the LARP. I'm known in the LARP scene for like creating characters, which I really like. And I help edit people's characters a lot because LARP is a massive, massive, wonderful, expansive thing to do, but there are not a lot of people of color. So when you have people writing characters for you or they're writing your game settings, unintentionally, you can end up kind of harming communities. So it's my job to kind of work with folks and be like, hey, how can I help you do this better? Because, you know, how can I help you open yourself up more to the entire world? Because most of the worlds are people of color anyway.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, I do tabletop and I design modules and like I do weird goth shit, weird witchcraft shit, weird Islamic shit. Like that's my jam. So I design weird fucking games. I like making people laugh, cry, mostly make people nostalgic because I'm a Cancer and that's what we do. There it is. That's what I do. I'm a loudmouth. I speak a lot. People listen. I don't know why.
Same. I'm not a Cancer, but I do speak a lot. And
I was gonna say.
No, I'm an Aquarius. Age of.
Ooh, intellectual. I'm not gonna read your astrology side of this, I promise.
Not right now, at this very moment.
I would. I grew up in a household that did astrology, so that any point in time, like if you were dating someone, my mother would be like, what's their sign? Are they a Scorpio? Scorpios are good for you. Don't mess with air signs. And I'm like, oh, okay. Thank you.
I thought it was strange. I found out that because I saw it, like Aquarius has like the water sign, but it's an air sign.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a whoosh, not a whoosh, I guess.
I was confused all of this time. So one of the things that that like went whoa to me when we met and when we were talking about LARP stuff was that you're one of those people that goes like LARP, real life, blah, 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 blah. Here's how we're just doing what we have always done. And I'm super interested as to like when that sort of like happened for you, where you were like, whoa, the worlds have merged, they're the same. Like,
so in order to tell you that, I have to talk a little bit about childhood, right? And I'm super open with how I grew up and like where I was raised and what have you.
mm-hmm.
So I grew up with all my family in kind of one place, with a grandmother and a mother and like all my cousins. We all lived in one house. And then my mother moved across the street, and then we lived across the street from each other, but all together.
Yeah.
And in, you know this, but for everyone else, African Americans, the African American community is a community that has an oral tradition, which can be traced through like all folks of the, you know, African diaspora.
Yeah.
We can trace that line directly back to oral traditions, grew up, all of that goes through and ends up in the African American tradition. And because we were enslaved here, we couldn't write anything down, right? So all you had to do was tell stories over and over again in order to keep your family history alive. There are people you have never met, but you know a story about it, right? So you could be like, let me tell you the story about Uncle Polly. Uncle Polly has been dead for like 60 years, but you could tell a story about Uncle Polly, right?
Yeah.
And in that way, Uncle Polly kind of lives on. So when I was a kid, I got all of this oral tradition from my family, and especially from my grandmother, I spent a lot of time with, right? And these ancestors, like, they were living to me, even though they were not in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
okay? They were like characters in a storybook that was like my storybook. And so growing up, when I had imaginary play, like they were a part of that imaginary play, but also I could really think about my relation of self and stories. So it took me, I did theater. I did many different things that were talked about, that we talk about as like LARP adjacent. But I didn't know LARP existed at all, until I was 30.
Wow.
Which is not that long ago, by the way. And
last year even.
I'm sorry?
I said last year even.
Nah, but thank you. I'm just going to keep this face for like the next 20 years, and we're going to hope it stays that way. But when I found out about LARP, I didn't want to go, right? I tell this story, but it's a good story. My friend Knox was like, you should LARP with us. And I was like, I'm not going anywhere where a bunch of drunk white people in the woods. This is literally what I said. I said to my white friend and a room full of people who were also white, I love you, but there's no way in hell you are taking me to the woods with a bunch of white people who are drunk with swords. I love you, but nah, that's never happening. And he was like, the swords of foam. And I'm like, I don't care.
Doesn't make
I can still die. And so he started trying new ways to sell LARP. Like, well, you love dressing up. You love telling stories. Come do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, no problem. And then he was like, there are other Black people there. There are lots of people of color who LARP. And I was like,
is this a trick or not?
Basically, I was like, is this a trap? And this is before Get Out came out. So I was like, is this a trap? What is this? So he helped me make a character, and I got there, and I was like, I was awkward for about 2 seconds before I just dived in, and like I was really helped. And there were a lot of people of color because I started LARPing in Southern California at one of the most inclusive games that Southern California has. So lots of people know who Jesse Heineck is. Jesse Heineck is a tabletop designer who's done like lots of amazing work. And Jesse actually wrote, like Jesse was like one of the originators of this particular LARP, which is ending this year after like 10 years.
Wow.
And the community was just one beautiful, dysfunctional, lovely family who tries really hard and like who like talks about their issues all the time and was really warm and welcoming. And the moment I realized that we were just ourselves, but playing dress up, but playing ourselves, but not playing ourselves, was about 6 hours into my first LARP event. I had crushing stage fright after I've spent my whole life on stage doing like theater and community and speech and debate and all this other stuff. That was my life. But in college, I'd gotten really, really, I got this message that the way I looked was not presentable for the stage. And it only compounded when I lived in California and I did like casting stuff and like on film, they like, and this was things I was actually told, I was too fat, even when I was like super small, right? I was too fat or, and this one was like the killer for me. I don't show up on film as Black, which was like, I was shocked because you live your whole life in a Black community and you're just like, I'm pale. Oops, but whatever. But the way Hollywood works is there's nothing about me to them that signifies what I look like. So that was also a thing. So I was like super shy about being on stage. I would do like a stage show with my friends called Dungeon Master. We loved it. We had a great time. But I was too afraid to sing or perform in front of anyone because I'd just been taught that everything about me somehow along the way was wrong. And my friend, the same friend who convinced me, Knox, said, you should sing. He made my character, knowing that I, Jonaya, had an issue with performing in front of people, made my character sing in a full tavern. We built a fully realized tavern. Oh my God. And that is, to this day, I did a song completely impromptu, out of my head, music, lyrics, everything, about being enough. Like, what does it mean to be enough? And I sang, and like people were like crying, and I was crying, and it was great. And like, I had new friends, and it was like 2 a.m, and everyone was like, oh, she's such a great bard. And on the inside, I was like, I am a great bard because this is just me. Oh my God. Right? So when you ask, like, what's the first time you realize that we're just kind of sort of playing out things that we really want and like kind of fighting back against like this socialized idea of who we need to be? It was always because it's within my culture to look at myself among stories because storytelling is human. And then it was super easy to see what I was doing. But the key came in that game. I started recognizing that people were doing this for themselves. Like, how many folks who are trans, who are LARPing, can say, or who do tabletop, are like, well, maybe I tried on a different gender, or maybe I tried on, like, huge numbers. Who's gonna do that academic study? Not me. Who's gonna do that? It's not like I want someone else to do it because they are more related to it. But it's who's gonna do that because the numbers are huge. Like, how many people say, oh, well, you know, I played this character who didn't have a lot of power. By the end of the game, they had a lot of power. And like, also, maybe that was me when I was a kid. Yeah, maybe that was you because it was you, because we do these things. And it's really scary to admit that, because then you have to like kind of think about all the characters you played, and some things are not so positive and like uplifting and beautiful, and like you can kind of see how you negatively did some things. And also, like, people in North America are afraid of one word when it comes to RPGs. I think one word. Like, everyone universally is afraid of one thing.
Oh my god.
Bleed.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
The number of times I've read whack articles that are like, bleed is terrible, avoid it. And I'm like, no, don't do that. This is how you fuck yourself up. This is how you fuck other people up. Don't do it. Like, recognizing that you are maybe looking at yourself socially, or like reinventing like social norms, or going against social norms that you've always wanted to go against, really does have other implications. And folks oftentimes will talk about bleed as this big scary thing that ruins lives, when it's only going to ruin your life if you don't talk about it, and if you don't express your feelings, and if you don't write about it, and if you don't like explain yourself why you have this. So people get scared.
What I'm kind of getting out of this, the visual image that comes to my mind is that because we are inserting ourselves into these games and doing these experiments, that like we have scars, right? We have traumas and hidden identities and all these things that we don't know about ourselves because they're covered up by all of the healing that we may have had to do.
Yeah.
And bleed, to me, immediately in my head, I was like, it's like reopening that wound. But if you're not dealing with the bleed, if you're not removing the thing inside that was hurting you, then you're just bleeding.
Yeah.
And if you just patch it up, you're like, well, next time we're gonna go through this all over again. So not like actually going in, fixing the issue, and then having a healthy scar left over, you know?
It's that 100%. Like, when we talk about bleed, we talk about it in such a negative connotation. Like, or people are like uplifting. Like, I created the term emancipatory bleed, right? So like, you feel emancipated. Why? And like, it has roots in W.E.B. Du Bois, and it has roots in like double consciousness, and then Fanon's triple consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Where marginalized folks have to split themselves and be two different people in order to, like, you can't ever be one person. You're always going to be this and this and this and this, right? And how you can try on what it feels like to not have those terrible things placed upon you, right? How to investigate your fears. Like, that's my whole bag. That's what I do. However, people are so willing, like players especially, are so willing to avoid bleed, right? Or avoid what they think is bleed. I, on like my first podcast ever with like Alex Roberts, right? She talked to me about, she asked me a question about bleed, and I explained that I don't have romantic bleed. I don't get it. And like, when I say it, people are like, wait, what? Never? And I'm like, well, I didn't know why. I just can't feel it. I'm always aware that the person is playing a character, right? Even when I'm super immersed. Like, this is embarrassingly written up in my thesis. Like, I have this beautiful romance going on, right? This gorgeous, deep, in-depth, like hot gloriousness. And at the end, it's like, this is a great friend. Yay, right? Where people should be bleeding all over this person, like gushing out.
Yeah.
Well, why don't I have romantic bleed? Or why am I not investigating that? Well, probably because I'm demisexual and I need to know someone for a very long time. So that access doesn't apply to me. But I still don't ignore it, right? Even though I say this is not a thing I normally get, I'm like, okay, so maybe I'm not feeling this way, someone else feeling this way. Or maybe I'm looking at, well, why don't I get romantic bleed? Why am I not having this? And I think we need to really deeply investigate our bleed before we just like toss it under the rug, like, this is bad things doing bad. No, don't say it's bad and walk away. say, this is negatively affecting my life. Why? Question mark.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this doing this thing? Not bleed should never happen. And if you're bleeding, or if you're in a position to bleed, or if you whatever, then your game is bad, or you're playing wrong, or I never feel bleed at all. I've never had bleed in my life. And I'm like, right? Sorry, I kind of went off topic there, but
no, it's great.
But I do think that bleed is the number one kind of misunderstood thing. And there's this idea that you don't get bleed from tabletops.
I don't.
That's a lie. You a liar.
Yeah.
You definitely get bleed from tabletops. You've been playing the same tabletop for 10 years. And you say you don't get bleed. Get out of here.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the time, it's the people who build self-empowering characters that continue to do so that they get that re-up. You charge up, I did something really great, I felt really strong, and then you feel good Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday starts falling off, you hit Saturday, boom, let's do it again.
Yeah. I love talking. You know what I really love doing?
Tell me.
I love talking to people about their characters.
Oof.
I'm like the one person who, and I've been talking about, just like, I know that Big Bad Con and like a couple other cons will have like the booth of tell me about your character.
Yes.
And like you give to charity, or and like lots of people do this. And I'm like, I just want to hear people's characters. Like I will sit there for hours. Tell me about your character. I will listen to the last 20 years of your D&D session. And then what happened? Do you think this is a problem as resultant of X, Y, Z? I can't help myself. I'm nosy. I want to know.
Never ask me that question. You will.
Why? I want to know.
You will get the one character that I have played in every game forever.
But see, wait. You said the one character you played in every.
The one character that it may seem like a different character at times, but it's just the same character at different points in their life. It's basically just me processing all the things, and I'm aware of it. It feels good. It's fantastic.
I've got a theory for you. My theory.
We're in theory. So.
We are in theory. We are, in fact, in theory. My theory, I have two theories. Alibi is a lie. Which, when you say this to LARPers, they go like this. How very dare you attack me? And the second theory is all your characters are just, which is like, which no one wants to hear, because like if you've played like a truly evil, awful character, right? Yeah. You're like, I loved playing that evil, awful, like genocidal, homicidal, horribly sexist, ha ha ha, right? People get like shocked, right? And automatically assume that you're a terrible human being. But in reality, there are reasons why you would get into roles like that. And like, I would love to break that down with like Boal and stuff like this when we're talking about why the oppressed take on roles of the oppressor, right? And why it's necessary to do so, which I do believe you should be trying out in your play, why being the oppressor may be a good thing for you to try in a game. But that idea of you just playing the same character, but like at different points in their lives. So I have like a physical picture, but I don't have a physical picture of the other one. Uh-huh. I recently found in a box a picture of myself at like 19 in college, in my very first production in college. And I was one of the Bacchae, right? The sexy, terrifying, like they basically tear you apart and also make out with you, right? The believers of Bacchus. And last fall, I played a witch who was like super powerful and really amazing, and like it was basically just me playing what I would be naturally if I had no societal restrictions, right?
Perfect.
And I looked at these, I found this picture, and I looked at the other picture, and I went like this, and it's the same person. It's the same person. It's the same makeup. It's the same look. It's the same smile. It's the same everything. They both look like they're going to eat you. And I can't say that one of them, I can't say which one came first, right? I can say that they're the same person, though. And I wasn't even LARPing that character on stage, right? Like I was embodying the character on a theatrical stage, but I was also embodying a different character in a LARP. So I think that we all have characters we play a billion times. Like I've got a friend that's been playing a LARP character for like 30 years or some shit. Like not one, I've got like 12. Like folks will play the same person, and I don't think that's a dig against them. Or like sometimes you just want to play the thing that helps you understand yourself, and that's not bad at all. As long as you're not fucking other people up.
Yes. There was this really interesting moment to me because I am very much about seeing the intersections of all art like smashed together, and how all those languages have these really big similarities. There's this moment where I'm a big Childish Gambino fan, watching someone progress over time, like as a person, and like put that in the music. And when Childish Gambino came out with the album because the internet has this whole story inside of it, and there's even like a script and all this stuff. And in an interview, someone asks like, so like, are you like the character, the boy, or is this like a removed thing, or are you just like telling a story? And he was like, that's a strange question because like I made it, so like I'm in there, like that's me, even if I was to say that it's not, like to some degree, like it can't really detach myself from that. So maybe I said some things in there that I didn't know that I said, and there's some things that are reflecting back and forth in that way. And when he said that, I was like, yo, everything I make is me. Like,
yes! Yes! It's true. But I mean, like, this is something no one really wants to talk about because they get embarrassed, right? Because of alibi. This is why I say alibi's a lie. So alibi in LARP, for folks that don't know, is basically exactly what it sounds like. Like you need an alibi to do something, right? The fiction of the LARP, the character, you're saying that it's not really me, it's my character that is this thing, right? I'm not this thing, but my character is this thing. And then you have the ability to play that role because you're kind of giving yourself space. There's actually, it's super weird and neat, but I think it's very connected to theater in a way. Yeah. Brecht, who was like this badass theater, amazing German dude, was basically trying to take theater back for the people and away from the middle class, right? Trying to make theater more engaged with societal issues. So he came up with something called, I can pronounce the German, but I'm not going to be that bougie today. It's called the V effect, which basically puts a distance between the audience and you, right? And I think like that's very similar in ways to alibi, because the alibi, you're saying that it's not me, it's this character, right? And whether you're LARPing or you're playing tabletops, you say it's not me, it's my character. My character did these things. Now, in a tabletop, your character is you yourself are not actually going into like the dungeon and murdering all the rats and kobolds, right?
Simulations.
But you chose to do those actions, so we could talk about that. In LARP, you are physically doing these things. Like, I had a character. Her name was Jillian. She was in a LARP that was loosely based on Westworld, but had like some other great social justice things. It was produced by like Not Only LARP, which is a Spanish LARP company. It was in a real Western town. Okay, I got to hold guns for the first time.
What?
Like, yeah, yeah,
I remember
yeah.
the first time I held a gun.
Like I signed up for it because I'd never been allowed to hold guns in my life because I would die. Like
Yeah.
someone would shoot me for picking up some fake guns. So I was like, let me go to this LARP as research for my thesis and see what it's like to hold some fake ass guns.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact, it was hard for me to hold the guns, and I had two of them on a belt. Anyway, the point is this. Jillian
Mm-hmm.
shot some folks because attacking. Jillian got escaped for her life. Jillian was throwing people and like had to like violently fight for her life. This is what Jillian did. Jillian drank whiskey at the saloon all night. Jillian tried to figure out which male robot would be best for the whorehouse because she was very upset about gender parity not being achieved inside the whorehouse. And who was maybe everybody was you need lots of different you need whores of all shapes and sizes. We need whore variety. This is the things we were thinking. Jillian
Hashtag
did
horde
that.
variety.
Exactly. Hashtag horde variety. But you can't say I was embodying Jillian. I was Jillian. I was Jillian. So Jonaya did in fact do this. Jonaya really did pick people up and toss them, like literally physically toss people. I really did I didn't shoot people with a real gun. It was like a cap gun, but those things felt realistic. Like these actions are actions that I actually took. The words that came out of my mouth are the words that actually came out of my mouth. Right. The alibi is just a lie you tell yourself to get yourself to the point in which you're comfortable enough to kind of break that societal norm, right? To kind of say, I can do these things because here, no one's going to do, no one's going to shoot. No one's calling the cops. Yeah. No one's going to call the Spanish police on me because I'm shooting robots. And my friends who are robots are like, oh, wow, I get to be really vulnerable because I intrinsically trust the people who are here not to harm me. So I can just do really, I can let terrible things happen to me because I know they're not going to happen for real. And that alibi, that idea of alibi, we like to pretend that it's something bigger than it is, but it doesn't exist. It's just what we have to tell ourselves. It's like, you know how you get in a little pool before you get into the big pool where the pool is cold?
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's still good. You can still drown in it. It's still water though. But you're gonna jump in. You're just kind of easing yourself into the fiction. And that relying on alibi a lot is kind of what gets us in trouble, because we try and divorce ourselves from the experience so far, we can lose the really positive benefits of seeing what's happened when we do have these things, or when we do gain something or gain momentum. In addition to that, I think it kind of robs us from the ability to see why design choices can really hurt us. And I think more designers also should look at what and how they're designing oppressions and why they're functioning some things in, and what that's going to do at a table or within a LARP space. Because you will never be able to kind of calibrate how hard something's going to hit someone.
Yeah. Definitely up my alley there with mutants. It's the oppression session.
I'm going to play so bad. Play.
It's so wonderful. But what I really enjoy about what you're saying is that the immediate reaction. So let me roll it back. In the fighting game community, there are these people known as secret bosses. There are people who, let's say, you're in the fighting game community, you go out to tournaments like in your local community, and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna go down to SoCal, and I'm gonna fight some people. I'm gonna go to Arizona, I'm gonna fight some people, and all this, and you're doing your thing. But then some real good player comes over to your town. And they're like, oh, here are all our best players, ranked in number, 1 through 10. Challenge them. Fight them. And they do, however well, however poorly. But then you're like, wait. We have the secret boss. The person who only comes to a tournament every now and again. They're not ranked on our PR. They don't play enough or whatever. But they beat everybody. They're just so good. They're like easily in our ranked top 10, but no one really knows about them. And then that person comes forth and usually just like trashes, just obliterates. You are the secret boss of my tabletop / LARP community, like my personal community. I was like, just waiting for the moment to be like, go, secret boss! Like, and so the reason, like the first time that like clicked in my head is when you come into these intersections where you're like, I have been a player, here's what has been going on as a player. I have been an academic, here's what's going on as an academic. I have been a designer, here's what's going on as a designer. Here's myself as a woman, as a person of color, as like a Muslim, and like as a goth person, like all these things. But it's a lot of the time people haven't explored all the avenues. And of course, like, you're still a human being, you're still exploring, like learning things and stuff. But you see the lines. And like a lot of people don't see how these things end up intersecting in the moments of play.
Yeah.
And then how those things, like those lines come back out as lines, whereas most people get all tangled. Like that's why I feel like the whole bleed thing is people get all like, oh, it's too tangled. Like I'm not going to start untangling that.
Well, thank you for saying that. So now I'm going to tell you.
Tell me.
What you don't know is that I have a very interesting relationship with video games. Yeah, so my family are like secret nerds. And when I say secret nerds, I mean like they collected. There's this idea that, and we all know about it now, but there's this idea that Black folks aren't nerds, which is like, haha, hilarious. Yeah. From my grandmother to like everybody else I know, there was at least one nerdy thing about them. And one of the things was video games. So we had an Atari, like we were broke, like poor, but like we would get random things, like random luxury goods, because I'm from New Jersey and stuff falls off the back of trucks. So, you could go to the pawn shop and be like, I don't know why this Atari is $5, but I'm going to buy it. So these, like we had an Atari and I loved playing the Atari, right? Mm-hmm. And that was fun. But then Nintendo came out. And I remember when the first system came out, my grandmother had the ability one year to buy every set of grandchildren their own Nintendo. I know, right? Right? But she took mine back.
What did you do?
Because
you didn't do the dishes. No, you didn't take the chicken out until she was 5 minutes away from getting home.
That's exactly what happened. No, she believed that I should not have video games. I should only have books. So every other cousin got the video game system, and she just took mine and replaced it with a stack of books. Which that was cold. I mean, I love the books, but I loved playing video games with my cousin, but I always felt like I couldn't quite play them. And then my mom, and this is a true story, my mom found a Sega Genesis in the middle of the street one day. Well, crossing the street, a Sega Genesis. And God several games.
You should have a Sega Genesis.
Including Sonic and Mortal Kombat, okay? Oh. Right? Classics. Yes. And she took them and she brought them to the house. And I played Mortal Kombat like every waking moment. I beat Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. I hated anything that had a story, which was funny because like this is exactly what I do now. But like my favorite video games, well until I was in my 20s, were fighting games. I fucking loved fighting games. I've played every single Mortal Kombat that you could probably get your hands on, and I've like when it comes to Street Fighter, I would just I would beat everything with Chun-Li. As long as I had Chun-Li, everything was okay. Yeah. So it's like this idea of a secret boss. I'm like, oh, my first gaming experiences were all fighting games. And like, and I only got those fighting games because in like mysterious ways, right? Yeah. Like, who finds a Sega Genesis in the middle of the street? Anyway, that's only neither here nor there. But like back on track, you're talking of intersections. I don't think we've been taught to give our opinions. No, that's not true. It's not opinions. To give our experience and our lived experience the place in life that it deserves, and the place in the place in academia it deserves, the place in design that it deserves, because we've been taught that personal experience, okay, is flawed. As all sorts of input, personal experience is flawed. Okay? Mm-hmm. But let's talk about personal experience being flawed. In the great age of anthropology, it was a bunch of white men going to a bunch of communities of color and taking down, and I actually usually have a notebook right in front of me, and we do. So tell me, what does your culture do? Mm-hmm. Yes, savages. I hear you are. Mm-hmm. And how do you eat children? Good job. Yeah. Let me just. And what do you use this thing for? Is it a thing? Like, what kind of instrument? Laundry. Right. And then they put it in Then they put it in a little book, and that book gets sent to rich white universities, and then people go, "This is anthropology. These are like this community does this." It's not that researcher's lived experience, right? They can kind of be along with the community, but they're not asking anyone, and they're not even all the way describing people's tales. When you look at like Aboriginal thought in Australia, like perfect example, for Kitai, for 7th C, I was tasked with writing kind of an analog to Australia. And so I started my research, and I don't do nothing without research. I get on the phone and I find people. If it's not my firsthand knowledge, I'm like, who can I talk to, right? So this is what I do. And I had all the resources of NYU at my disposal, so I could just go to the massive library and like find like firsthand interviews and stuff. So I did a draft. I looked at it and I said, something's not right. Mm-hmm. And I realized all of the research that I had based my stuff off of was by white people studying Aboriginal culture, because that's what we have. It wasn't the voice of Aboriginal people telling me, like, even when talking to people, it was like not the voice of the Aboriginal people. It was like when you talk about what was the history of Australia, the history of Australia you get is not always through an Aboriginal lens. So I had to then look up, well, are there people let me educate myself about people telling their own stories. Mm-hmm. And I dug deep into NYU's archives and found books that were written by individual places in Australia, and how things were divided, how like corporates, and like how every like welcoming ceremonies, everything, every nitty gritty, gender, sexuality, all of these things that had been missed because people were told that their own lived experience was less than a researcher who did not know them come into play. And once I stopped and I looked at the two drafts, it was radically different. And I didn't feel bad about taking so long either. The only way I believe it could have gotten better if I didn't write it at all. If I hadn't written it. Like, personally, my preferred method is if they could, like, while I appreciate the money, good job. If we could have Aboriginal designers working on their own things, right, like that would be great too. But our idea about when you talk about the intersections, and like I get a lot of flack. Like I do get flack in Europe, and I've gotten death threats. I've gotten death threats from telling people that what they're doing is not okay. Mm-hmm. And it's because they don't quite. Sorry, there's a motorcycle outside.
So
It's spring that it's spring in Brooklyn. It's exciting in here. So like people's lived experiences are being made less than because of the dominant narrative, right? Because the dominant narrative is considered the expert, and like everyone else is down here. And it doesn't just the more marginalities you add onto your back, I just feel like the more likely you are to see it. Like there are things you'll be able to see that I can't see, right? Like my glaring big thing is that I am just like really, I still feel, no matter how long I've investigated myself, that I sit in like this idea or this marker of what I believe is like cisgendered, right? But that, so I can see some things, right? Because like my partner is non-binary. Like I have other things I can kind of see, but that's a blind, like I'm aware that that's a blind spot for me. But on the other hand, I'm totally going to be the person that picks up on your Islamophobia, your anti-Semitism, your bullshit rhetoric about other things. Like I'm going to pick up those intersections because I have them. And I have the academic knowledge behind me to be able to tell you why these things exist, which is also a privilege that people don't talk about. Like making academia accessible, making things accessible so that we can all kind of do this work together is like a big thing. Sorry, I've been talking for a while. You know, I can get on the soapbox.
That is why you are here. Yeah, I host the show, but really I say like 4 things and then just be like, yeah, I just want to listen. But one point that you made that really, well, a lot actually, many points, but in going in reverse, I didn't go to college because I had to go to community college. I was working full time. Those things did not work out. I was also dealing with mental health that I didn't understand at the time. None of that stuff could function together. And so I have like lots of gaps. Like I see the gaps between me and the other people that I hang out with, people that I think are wildly intelligent. And some of those people like have higher education, some don't. The people who do, sometimes it's like we're riding down the street and we're all in the same car, and then there's like a bum 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 bum, and I'm the only person that felt it. I'm like, hey, what was that? Can y'all turn it back for me real quick? And being able to, in these situations where we have these games and we want to honor or hand off or bring a light to different cultures and different people who want to do the work, who want to represent things well, or if you're the only person available at the time, you need to do that work. Having a New York City's big old boom library, grandma's books, that's a really powerful resource to have. It's not that I want to put the little asterisk and say that you don't need that in order to, so there's no excuse for not doing other things, because you can still, people exist, you can still call somebody up. But that those additional things that make it so that people have different things that they're capable of. And that's why it's so important to continue expanding, because they could be like, we need a black person, and they can call you, and they could call me, and they could be like, DC, tell me about women's issues. And then they could be like, Jonaya, tell me about non-binary issues. And be like, this is why you need more.
Oh my God, I don't know.
Like, there are women. I know some. You want to call like that kind of thing,
But
to flower out.
Well, what I just want to speak on something that you mentioned, like the car going like this. I think we don't spend enough time talking about how academic privilege is huge in our gaming communities, right? And what that means, because how can we educate people if we're treating them as if they're stupid? Like I before this, I was a preschool teacher, right? Mm-hmm. Kids are wonderful, and like I will fight somebody who says that they don't like kids. I mean, like them as in like believe they should be on the human earth and like flourishing and thriving and being nurtured. I will fight somebody, but the way we talk to children and the way we talk to adults who we think are uneducated are pretty much the same, and it's both wrong. Because humans are brilliant in their own way, and you have to like reach them on where they are and then like just give them the tools. As long as you just give people the tools and you give people access, then you're already solving a large issue. Like I'm on panels and I do get burned out sometimes from diversity panels, right? But like, let this be a lesson to every con. If you give me a free ticket and you help me get there, I will sit on a panel and be like the nicest person calling people out for you. And why do I do that? I do that because who else is going to look you in the face and be like, that was racist. However, let me help you with this thing. So I don't think you're a monster. I don't think you deserve to die. I don't think you are like the worst person, scum of the earth, unless you're a Nazi, because then somebody else got to help you, and it's not me. but otherwise, here, let me help you with this, and let me give you the tools that no one gave you. Right? Racism is not born. Like no one is born a racist. No one is born a sexist. No one like I've had a lot of babies in these hands. Allow me to tell you, babies only learn what you tell them is true. You are only 100%. Socialized to believe what is true. So if you're socialized to believe that people without a college degree are ignorant, that's what you're going to believe. And then you're going to take stock in anyone, even though like you can have you can have a PhD and be dumb as bricks. That is absolutely 100% a thing you can do. Like you've got a PhD, but it doesn't mean that you know how to use life or anything else. Also, we have this idea that just because someone has access, that they don't necessarily have to give it to them, like give it to others. I believe we 100% should be giving access. If you have a reading list, if you have a book to give people, give them the book, give them the knowledge that they need, like give them a short reading list on how to help themselves and how to get better. I think that's one of the best ways to help folks is to give them access to that knowledge, but also to recognize that that academic privilege is such a real thing. Like my mom has a GED, but my mom is like one of the smartest people I know. She could read you law code forward. She can help you with resumes, all this other stuff. Like my mom is like one of the most brilliant people. But if you looked at what she looks like on paper, which is what we've also been socialized to believe is better than everything else. Big time. Yeah, some of y'all reading gaming resumes looking like, look at this person. I'm like, trash. Like it's true. So like some people got 5 credits and are like one of the best things ever, and other people got like 80 credits and you're like, trash. But there's that's the thing, is that we are not what we are on paper. 100%. We're fully functioning adults or children. We're fully functioning beings that are guided by what we've been guided by socially. If we're taught certain things, that's what we believe is right. Like I talk a lot about the mythical norm all the time. Wherever I can go, I talk about the mythical norm. That is my jam.
I remember you informed me.
It's like when I say this, everybody in the room goes like, you can even see, and it's a thing for legit everyone in the entire world, which is Audre Lorde's idea of the mythical norm. Everything all over the earth, if you are engaging with the Western culture, if you've seen Western movies, if you've so much of our lives are ingrained into the mythical norm. This idea that the perfect person and the perfect person to be is a white, heterosexual, cisgendered, Christian, thin, healthy, financially secure, male who's young, right? Like that's why like I say it all the time. If you put that's why clothes are gendered, right? Like
Yeah.
this is why structural inequality exists, right? Even the way things are made, like why are pins like hard for people with smaller hands to hold? Like all sorts of like tiny, minute details of life is made because everything in our life. Why is flesh tone band-aids not my skin? That's not my skin color.
Not anyone's skin color.
Like it's nobody's skin color. But this idea that it's like this weird peach that no one is, right? Maybe there is actually somebody this color. Let me not say that. But this idea that that's what's normal excludes everyone on earth, because even the young straight white Christian rich men in our lives, they're gonna get old one day, and then they're gonna be old and like we know what we do with old people in this society. We call them useless for no reason. So there's this idea that none of us are, if you are the mythical norm, you will quickly not become the mythical norm, right? And you have your whole life structured around it. And because of that, we can really do some harm to each other and to ourselves. Like we constantly see this in gaming spaces, and no one's really talking about it. Look at the games we're playing, right? And look at what games we have issues with. Now go to the list of developers for that game, and then go down the list of the things. If they all look like the same person, if it's all the same person, and they say, well, we don't understand why our game is racist, or we don't understand why our game is sexist, or we don't understand this. Well, you're never going to understand. You're shooting yourself in the foot. You're doing bad capitalism. Yes. I am an anti-capitalist, but I will tell you that if you don't have women and people of color, like if you don't have folks who are not cisgender, if you don't have a diverse gaming staff on your project is fucked, because you're not even going to recognize, what were you saying? The lines, right? You're not even going to recognize the lines if you're all the same. If you're in a video game company and it's nothing but white men, and then somebody comes for your video game, is like, yo, your video game's mad racist. And they're like, but we put in Wanda. Wanda is a sassy black woman. Everybody loves a sassy black woman. And it's like, yeah, but it's Tokyo.
They modeled
and we're not saying, yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. Like you're cutting out groups of people. You're gonna miss things. You're gonna miss a bunch of things because you don't realize how life is layered and how it's much more technicolor, much more exciting and beautiful than we let ourselves believe. So I think especially within we have a LARP census. Like we had this done, and I would love to have it done again. Christopher Amherst did it. And when it was performed, it was like LARPing is 93% white. Right? I would love to see what that looks like right now, right? I would love to see what that census looks like now. Just like in North America, I would love to see what LARP looks like right now, because gender was kind of almost equal in a way, but it didn't count folks who didn't. I don't know. There's lots of things that need to be done with it. But the fact that it was super, super white and super filled with like middle class to wealthy people. Yeah. Now look at our LARPs. What I want you to tell me, when you hear the word LARP, what do you think? Like when you think of like someone goes, name the biggest LARPs you know. Like yeah.
Definitely Harry Potter. Also, what's the name of that book with the wizard guy? It's in Chicago.
Dresden Files?
Yeah, Dresden Files. That's another one I think of. It's usually those like magical white people ones. Oh, vampires too. Yeah, big on vampires.
Okay, now who created these LARPs? Who writes these characters? Right?
Oh,
let me tell you, College of Wizardry, which is like, so College of Wizardry is like the big blockbuster thing that some people may think of when they see like slick whatever that's imploding, rightfully. Okay, so you look at like who's on staff or who was on staff. I guess you can count. I mean, like, I'd count Eden, but there's a lot of missing folk of color over there, right? And then you have, but fine, let's just say, let's give them some slack. Let's say it's a European LARP place, even though y'all got shit tons of people of color in Europe, and you have for thousands of years. Moving on, so that's actually no excuse. Then you could talk about Neuro Magischola, which is also very big in the U.S., which has people of color in the story. I would like to rewrite large sections of New World Magischola. No tea, no shade. I will tell that's something I would say to anybody's full frontal space. But there's like, look at the stories that we're telling, or the stories that you think you're telling about being inclusive. Yeah. And if they haven't been written by a person of color, or they haven't been written by a woman, or if and you're seeing like people of color and like people of color are telling you there's an issue, well, then you need to fix it. Like, shout out to New World Magischola, who did try to like fix some things, and like, good job. However, look at the LARPs that are created, right? Look at the LARPs that are being pushed in the limelight. Ask yourself how many of them have people of color behind them. Look at the RPGs. All the RPGs, like all the indie, first of all, most of the RPGs that I want to play are indie RPGs.
Big time.
Like, especially right now, I have no interest in playing like standard big name stuff, because indie RPGs are bringing fire, right? Like, I want to see what's going on. Like, I played Bronwyn. I don't know Bronwyn's last name. Bronwyn came out with this wonderful game called Hot Alien Sex, in which you are like aliens trying to figure out how to have sex, and it's like teaching consent, and it's so good. It's such a good game, and as someone who can be like a little bit shy on the inside, I had a great time. Like, these, like, Kat Jones makes some really interesting, like, Kat does make some interesting games. Like, folks, Julia Ellingbo. Like, can we talk about Julia Ellingbo?
Big ups to Julia. And
how brilliant she fucking is? Like, the games I want to play are indie games, because they're games that I can see myself playing. Yeah. I talk a lot about like Visigoths versus Morgoths, which I played at Dreamation with Lucian Khan.
Shout outs to them as well.
He's created this amazing game that, going through, he would describe the characters, and like, I would listen to these NPCs, and he spent such time creating who these people are as people. And it wasn't like, this is Beth is another white girl, or this is another, and it's the same person over and over again. These people are complex identities, complex thoughts, complex moods, and indie designers are bringing the heat in that way. And I think the same thing for LARP. The LARPs that I want to play now are most often scenarios, so smaller freeform LARPs. I love what's coming out of like Gion's, like the one-person LARPs, and like Banana Chan's one-person LARPs. Like these smaller things where people are investigating a whole bunch of other shit. Jay Lee's Twain. If you have not played Twain, you need to get on it. It's so good. It's so good. I really enjoyed that as well. There are lots of indie designs that are being made by people who are outside of the mythical norm. And therefore, they're allowing you to play in these realms that you need to play in, that you want to play in, that are really interesting and great. It's not just, we're going to take this big franchise and make it a thing. Like, I'm so sick of, we're going to take this big franchise and make it a thing.
Time and time again. And
yeah.
There continues to be, I brought this up last night, and this completely lines up, because we see these things, and
Mm-hmm.
me, you, and the marginalized community at large, that when people make games and they say, "Oh well, we're gonna cast a large net to try and catch as many people
Mm-hmm.
as possible," it's these very few, usually cishet
Mm-hmm.
white guys. You get these very bland, unfocused versions of characters and stories, and even as Strix said, and it came back around that it even follows like the hero's journey, which is not the only way to tell a story. Uh,
If
and
I
I'm
hear
just,
one more thing about the hero's fucking journey, sorry, go ahead.
no, understandable.
I'm sorry.
There comes to this point where
Journey you.
I said the other night that your highly specific, really interesting thing to you is a game that a lot of people want. The nation doesn't want it. It's not like, oh, you're going to be the next AAA game, the next D&D, the next whatever have you. But you have a large amount. Like, because I think people kind of think like, oh, well, if I don't hit the world, then my game is
Yes.
not important. But it's like if you hit 100 people, your game is. If you hit one
Yes.
yourself, it is an important game. But
Yes.
largely, there are tons of people out there who are not getting that. So your contribution is amazing. And on top of that, through my experiences with video games lately, I kept throwing over to my friends. I was like, you know what I really love about these like indie games I've been playing is you can tell how much love is put into them. There's so much care in all of these little things, and it's always the games that are smaller and indie because they could put their whole heart and life and thought into it. They're like, we can add in these little things that are super specific that make it like make this more real to us, or things that are really important to us, all those tiny details. And those are the things we always point out about those games. It's like, oh, look at that tiny little animation that person did, just adds a little more flavor, a little more color.
Yes.
And that's what we give every time we actually tell our stories, and then when we're given opportunity to have those stories uplifted and shared. So I'm just message like getting in.
But I mean, like, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's so I have to, like, I'll tell you that my like I didn't want to design in public because none of the things I want to make are for people they're not for the mythical norm at all, right? Maybe they want to play, but I don't really care. And Julia Ellingbo said something recently, and I'm gonna like tear up while saying it because it's absolutely true. I am actually a little teary, which is we need to make our own games. I tell this to folks a lot, but like I didn't even think about it in the concept of myself. We need to make our own games because there are people like us who want those games. And there are people who need these games. So I had like a list of LARPs I want to play, but I would say, oh, nobody's going to want to play this LARP. But the truth is, so somebody's going to want to play it. Like, and then every time I talk about the LARPs I want to make, I always have like 6 people go, I definitely would play that LARP. Because, not because it's me, but because they too want the LARP. Like, if I told you that I want to make a LARP about a cookout, a summer cookout in 19 but see, it's like please. I want to make a summer cookout LARP in like set in like 1998.
Oh my god!
Right, and it's summertime, and it's like the cookout. It's the cookout, and everything goes wrong at the cookout, and it's everyone's thing. It's like the first cookout without like a black matriarch. Y'all all stuck, and nobody wants to be a Tyler Perry movie. Like that's what it is. It's like and you have all the tropes. Somebody has to make the potato salad. Somebody has to make the potato salad. It doesn't matter how bomb that potato salad is. It's just not as good as grandma's. Like all of this, like it's just not a thing. Like I want to make that LARP, but I kept saying, how many black people gonna want to LARP this? But then I forget, like, how do black people get in a LARP? I gotta admit, if somebody had invited me to a cookout LARP and they told me that's what the LARP was about the first time around, I would have gone to that LARP a lot faster. You know, I would have done this a lot faster. At NYU, I would explain LARP And the people who always stayed behind after my talks were people of color. And they'd be like, well, could we LARP about anything? And I'm like, what do you want to LARP about? Like, I had one friend who was Indian who was like, could you do like the set of a Bollywood movie? And I'm like, yeah, fuck yes. I would pay. I was like, I'd do that. I would definitely shut up and be backup dancer number 45. I would like, I'm fine with that character. Thank you for letting me play, and I appreciate it. Like, I think that we kind of hurt ourselves when we don't think of ourselves as a designer. We're all designers in our own way. We can all design. We can all play. We can all make a LARP. We can all make a tabletop. We can all make a freeform. There's nothing stopping you from doing this on your own, except you don't have access to the tools, or maybe no one's encouraged you to do so because they told you that you had to look a certain way. You had to have a certain amount of credits under your belt. You had to be doing this for the longest amount of time. You need this cred to do this, and you need somebody to open this door. All you need is a itch.io page, or however you say that, because I don't know. All you need is one of them little pages, and you do it like you used to do a zine. You go to the stables, you copy it, you put it on the copy paper, and you just do it. Like, I kept waiting for someone to ask me to design with them, and like I was so desperate for people to like design with me. I was taking jobs that were not making me feel good, or not making me feel as if I was a solid person. I was not making the games I wanted to make. While ignoring the games that I worked really hard and I did make, like the Slumber Party, which I made for the hashtag Feminism Collective, that came with the second, and actually comes with the second bundle. So like you don't really get to play it unless I run it for you, and I love running it because it's based on a real slumber party I attended in 1996, in which people were coming out of the closet talking about abuse. But they were also listening to sweet 90s tunes and like saying things like, we're a lot stronger than people fucking think we are. But and I would say to myself, who wants to play a 90s slumber party LARP with a soundtrack? Everybody. That game was full twice. Like every time I run that, it's full. So like people do want to play your games. And I think we need to really encourage people in that way, that they do want your knowledge. They do want to hang out with you. They do want to know you. They do want to play your games. The game you're thinking of, someone probably wants, right? Like, and I think especially the more marginalized you are, the more marginalizations you are, the more you can say, oh, nobody wants this niche game, right?
That's what I keep seeing it, is that to me, as someone who goes into the community and tries to, I try and do two things. I always try to listen to what people's problems are, and then I try and see what people's problems are, because there's what people tell you and what they know, and then there are the things that they don't know that you might be able to parse together, and maybe that's a potential thing. And after going through a lot of people, talking to people about, you can do the thing, and like here's tools, and here's other people, community members, other people who've done the thing, it almost always comes down to a really small sense of self, and not small as if they are small, but they're boxed into this, or pushed down into this small version that they are afraid of being seen, and that they're like, someone put me in this cage, and I can get out of it, but if I do, then everyone will see all of me.
Exactly.
And that is always the thing. But every time someone does that, it's beautiful. And they come out with something that they're like, I don't know if anyone's going to like it. And all that stuff. Like, I would have never in my life made this game. Nobody I know would have made this game. It's so interesting. Even if it's not like my style of game, not somebody else's style of game. It's always like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I can see you in here, and I see things I did not know about you that other people did not know, would have never have seen, and I can 100% definitely go, there's someone I know who wants this game. If it's not me, I know 10 other people.
Yes. And we really don't, we've been taught to hide ourselves, to make ourselves smaller so that no one sees that person. But we really need to remember. I'm tearing up again. I'm such a sensitive person, which is good. Um, I used to write and keep copious diaries. Mm-hmm. So I have copious diaries of myself from childhood through my high school years. So I could actually see how I grew, which is like, and I was raw, like, and very intelligent for a teeny tiny kid. Like some of the words I was using, pretentious little thing. That's not the point. The point is this, and this is how it relates. I used to write that I wished someone could create worlds the way I thought of them. Right? I wanted to be, I didn't understand why I didn't see Black women in historical times as being anything other than slaves, right? I was obsessed with finding like one Black woman who was not downtrodden upon. Like I spent my entire childhood searching for stories of Black women who, even though bad shit was happening around them, they did things, right? And that led me to this idea that there are so many stories that we should be telling, that should exist, and that we have the power to make these stories exist. We have the power to weave these stories out of our imagination. If someone can make a video game about stealing cars and driving them and like doing all this other stuff, mm-hmm. then why can't I make a small game, like a small tabletop game about making a meal for my friends? Like, why can't I share the things that I want with the world? Well, there is no reason why I can't do that. The only difference is people have been giving a better chance and a better shot at getting their games out there. But also I've been told that no one wants what I have. Yeah. But that's not true, because all of the games I've made, or like, and all of the things I've written are the things I needed as a kid and that I wanted. The opening of Lands of Gold and Fire, which I was the lead developer on, saving, pulling it up from the depths. I'm not shy about saying that either. I worked my ass off, and like nobody can't tell me I didn't, because I made some magic. Thank you, Jesse, for but I snuck my grandmother into that book, mm-hmm. and my sister and my mother, and like the people, like I knew that people needed these stories, and I would just sneak it in folks I knew, because like when writing about people, because someone needs that person, right? Someone needs a story, and I needed that story. So I wrote the things I needed. I told the stories I needed to tell. And now I guarantee you someone's going to open that book and go, wow, this is a character that exists in fiction. And I don't know who wrote it, and I don't know why they exist, but I needed this person. Yep. And we don't realize how important it is to put this into something, right? I ran a session of But Not Tonight, which is Cleo Yunson Davis's wonderful. I will run that every day on the daily. I love.
Shout outs to Cleo.
Yeah, major shout outs. I have seen people break down in tears while playing that game and saying, I played myself in high school. I didn't realize I was playing myself. I didn't realize that this game would give me what I needed to heal from a painful high school experience. I went in being jokey and fun, and this is how I came out. That happens so many times at a debrief after a LARP, or in the middle of a tabletop. Like, you're playing, like, these stories, these games, these things that you create have impact on people, mm-hmm. negatively as well sometimes. Mm-hmm. But the main point is that, especially for players who share marginalities, like if you think that your experience should not be a game, or if you think that your game is weird and like nobody wants it, I guarantee you, not only do people want it, there is at least one person who is not yourself who needs it. Needs it. Like they need it. They need it to exist.
Air, like you need water.
Exactly. It is it is sustenance for their soul that you have made something and you put it into the world and it exists. Like it's just unimaginable. Like we really need to think about that. Like if I can drum that into people's brains, that is one of the number one things.
I think one that this has been again, as all of our conversations have to be.
I can talk to you forever. Turn it into the afternoon session. People are like, when does this stop? And I'm like, never, motherfucker, never.
So inspirational. You have, God damn it, you were one of the most brilliant people I know. I will continue to say that until the sun stops shining in the sky. Thank you so much for being on the show and for bringing all of this forward. The people need more of you. And if you want to continue to help that happen, y'all, I've been posting it in the chat, patreon.com/Violet Riot Games, VioletRiotGames.
Help a sister out. I got stuff to do.
Traveling the world, doing these talks, these panels. You're wonderful.
Forcing people to tell me about their characters.
Yes. One of these days I'll tell you about my character.
Do I get to, as long as I get to film it?
Sure.
I just like to let everyone know that you agreed to that. I'm holding you to it now.
Yeah, I said it. I gotta do it. Like it's not gonna be the funnest thing I've done in that week.
Oh, now I want to hold you. It's okay. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for entering my life at a point in which, no, it's true, at a point in which I needed to remember that I wasn't alone, because sometimes I feel like we can always, especially for those folks out there doing the work, you get overburdened, you get burned out, you think you're alone, you're up there at the front of the battle, you're fighting by yourself, and you look around, everything's dark, you don't see who's fighting next to you because you're tired and you're broken and you're worn and you're gone, you're exhausted, and you just want to lay down and just crawl into the mud. Like that happens, like burnout happens, that happens to us absolutely all the time. And representational burnout is a thing. It is something we need to pay attention to. But one of the things that can help is remembering that you have people that love you, that respect you, and there are new people out here with new voices that can be helping each other. You're not fighting alone. So thank you for reminding me of that I am not alone on the front line at all. You constantly help. You do. So just remember that about yourself. Just remember. Y'all remember that too. I ain't the only one with a Patreon. I'm just saying. But we're all out here trying to make gaming feel as good and help everyone as much as we can. So I'm very glad that you asked me on. I'm so happy that I got to hang out with you today. And today is going to be a good day. We're going to try and make this a good one.
It's hitting so deep. So deep. You probably just healed like 15,000 people. Most of them didn't hear it, but I feel a little bit better. The sun just hit me in a... It's nice today. Oh, thank you so much. There are not enough words. Next time I see you, I'll just give you another amazing hug.
We'll get hugs. We'll have coffee. Yes. Throw some shade. We'll have some coffee.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for episode 2 of In Theory. There will be an episode 3. I don't plan them ahead of time. I like to just see who's doing what. See when someone has something to say. And then throw it out there. So be prepared, because so far it's just been nonstop fire.
Be prepared. Sorry.
Oh.
I asked for that, but I gave it to you.
I'm glad. All right, y'all. Thank you very much. Thank you, my amazing guest. And make sure you go hit patreon.com/VioletRiotGames. Throw some money. Make sure you spread it around to your friends. Obviously, after hearing this episode, you know how much this woman needs to be out there in the world. With the T. All right. See y'all in the next episode.
Afternoon, y'all. Morning.